Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the SAIEE Gauteng Centre webinar on the innovation dilemma. Where have all the innovators gone? Before we start, a few webinar considerations. Attendees are reminded to ensure the volume is turned up on your device. Ensure you have a stable internet connection. This will ensure the streaming and audio will run smoothly. Attendees can ask questions via the questions panel located within the GoToWebinar control panel. By default, the control panel is located on the right-hand side of your screen. The chat function is reserved for webinar organizers and panelists to communicate with attendees. Attendees will not be able to chat with each other, however, are encouraged to ask questions. A recording of this webinar will be made available on the SAIEE YouTube channel, SAIEE TV, under the Central Gauteng Centre playlist. This channel is updated regularly, so ensure check back as often as possible for new uploads. Please click on the link in the chat box and register and subscribe to receive updates when we upload webinars. A certificate of attendance will be issued a few days after this webinar. I'd like to introduce you now to our host tonight, Tsoledi Moloi. He's an instruments and control systems technician at Ardagh Glass Packaging Africa Wadeville factory. He specializes in maintaining and developing new control system strategies that focus on forming quality glass packaging containers. Tsoledi graduated from the University of Johannesburg with a Bachelor of Engineering Technology in Electrical Engineering, and is an enthusiast, for process automation and control, mainly industrial process automation. Having joined the SAIEE Central Gauteng Centre has exposed Tsoledi to diverse engineering aspects. Over to you, Tsoledi.
Good evening to everyone and to all the attendees. My name is Tsoledi Moloi, and I'm currently the portfolio holder for Technology, Knowledge and Leadership under the Central Gauteng Centre of the SAIEE. Today, with our topic, we are going to have our speaker, the CEO of IoT NXT, Mr. Lazarus Kara. And Mr. Lazarus Kara is a highly experienced digital transformation, product and technology strategy executive with a distinct skill set in executing large-scale transformations and digital commerce platforms and spearheading digital strategy and product development across diverse industries and geographies. But before we continue to our speaker, I would like all our attendees to make a way towards the handouts tab and make sure you download the What Now edition, August edition of the magazine, and also you can go through the 2024 Academy brochure. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Lazar.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can see my presentation. You can see me, and I'm good to go.
Perfect. Please proceed.
Awesome. Okay, guys. So yeah, I've got a bit of a longer name, and that's an unfortunate one I have to live with. My name is Lazarus Karapanagiotides, and I wrote an article a while back based on my experience in digital transformation consulting, where notably in roughly around 2010, when Uber just came out, and there was a massive hype. People were starting to talk about innovation in Silicon Valley and all these things, which sounded quite interesting, but required quite a lot of demystifying, if I can call it that. So I penned an article called "Where Have All the Innovators Gone?" because it felt, if you fast forward, give or take 10+ years, that hype had subsided, and we were just living in a world of seeing innovation, but not necessarily living on that hype wave as we did back then. And I asked myself the question, have they gone, or has something else happened? And I'll unpack that a little bit more, and I'll also share a few strategies and tactics I feel will be useful for us as all of us are innovators, and I'll also explain that. So what is innovation? Probably one of the most confusing terms ever invented or penned. And the Oxford Dictionary doesn't actually help us much. It defines innovation as the introduction of new ideas, things, or ways of doing something. Doesn't really help, right? there was another definition that I saw which said the act of innovating. Innovation is the act of innovating. So now everyone who calls themselves innovative or an innovationeer or someone who's in tech innovation, I often greet those terms with a bit of skepticism, because innovation is something quite unique and something that needs a bit more understanding, because it's not these big light bulb moments which people have. In fact, if you scratch deeper, you'll find that there are almost no new ideas under the sun. So to point back to where I said how I started this, do you guys recall when Uber just came out and people were saying, sure, the Uberization of everything. How do I Uberize plumbing? How do I Uberize salons? Everything from that to pest control, as you can see here. Everyone was thinking about amplifying everything, and you'd probably go to a family gathering and you'd be quite proud to show someone a cool app that you found out. And that was quite a notable era, because there were a few technological advancements which made us as consumers of technology more receptive to these trends. And that was if I can call it, facilitated by what we often call as FANGs. And I know this has kind of evolved to what they call the Magnificent Seven, with a few more companies that have entered the fray. For example, chip makers like NVIDIA are also part of this. But Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, Google were the guys who sort of said, hey, we're the guys in Silicon Valley bringing all these technologies to you, where we have these fancy platforms. You guys are on our platforms all day, whether you like it or not. We have the monopoly. And everyone was wowed by the innovation that these people brought. So this created a lot of room for, and I'll be honest, consultants and agencies to create the hype. Build it and they will come. Appify it and they will come. Digitize this, digitize that. And within all of that, the terms innovation were often synonymous with those phenomena. But I'm here to tell you that while the innovators were out in full force and people have made good money just having workshops and doing design thinking and talking agile, they haven't gone away. Something else has to change, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. Now, before we delve further into innovation, it's really important to start thinking about who the people are that are starting to shape the market. And I want to sort of put a persona in front of you. We all believe that the persona, we all engage with family members, friends, and if we have children, we see how they evolve with technology. Now, I want to, if we talk about millennials, Gen Zs, Gen Xs, I don't even know who is what anymore. My go-to is this person. She is, let's call her a Gen Z. The apps she uses are things we probably aren't all synonymous with. TikTok, TikTok, Spotify, OpenSea. So she's probably delved into buying NFTs. Some might ask, what is that? Well, yeah, very expensive pictures of things like rocks, cats and dogs, and traded on the blockchain, if you really were wondering. And then things like Twitch, where people enjoy playing games and watching people play games. And I'm sure if any of you have absorbed, and I can add more to this, like YouTube, but these are the digital or innovative formats in which are shaping how the younger generation are expectant of technology and expectant of innovation. And I'll use this to anchor a little bit more of what I want to say. I also want to unpack trends which we've encountered, which fill us with anxiety, fill us up with angst, because we can't even keep up with, you know, the latest trends of today. Every day there's something new. What is blockchain? What is metaverse? What is this chip hype that I have to buy shares into NVIDIA about? What is that all? What spurred that? What's the latest game kids are playing on their phone? What's this Fortnite thing? All of these things are innovations happening around us, shaping how we expect technology to work. And also, if I speak about the persona I mentioned, are shaping how we need to start thinking about innovating in our world. So I won't go into detail about each one, but the metaverse, it felt like that came and went. What the hell was that? I mean, let's be honest. Wearables, we all wear something, or we all have a device which talks to the internet. those things were not just a fad. I think they're now being accepted into our daily lives. Automation. A lot of corporates are introducing automation steps and tools. They call it robots, not physical robots, software robots that virtualize common processes or remove redundant roles from humans. Real-time supply chains, tracking the movement of goods through things like cameras, car trackers, IoT sensors across the value chain. The common trend today, and if you haven't tried ChatGPT, I suggest you do. It is life-changing, but that has made the consumerization of AI far more applicable in our lives. In the last 2 years, what we've been able to do with AI is just rocketed, and guess what? It's not going to stop there. It's actually going to accelerate at a greater pace. And cloud-based software. So these are all trends that have shaped how we think about technology of today. And I think it does fill us with anxiety because we're saying, gee, we barely understand any of these. Now, how do we keep up? And cybersecurity being the last one, because as technology changes and makes us smarter, more capable, more productive people, so too do the crooks, the bad guys. They also get more savvy. In fact, more so, because they spend all their time thinking how to find loopholes and Trojan horses in our daily society to do this. And I know of a personal friend who has had their WhatsApp hacked by just having a person hack someone else's WhatsApp, pretend they're their friend, and then hijack their account and access a lot of their information. And that's just one silly example. So I want you guys to think about this too. And this is not to create more anxiety, but this is to show you how the rate of change has happened in our world. It's not the most perfect graphic. However, you can see that the rate of technology has spiked, and the suspicion is that this is going to continue going through the roof in simple terms. And there are many such graphs. There's Moore's law, which kind of changed, which was basically the rate of processing power, which doubled, and someone can correct me, but every 2 years, if I recall that correctly. So all of these things are indicators of how technology has changed and become more common in our daily lives. And if I go back to the persona, we as humans are people who are learning to live with a lot of these technologies. So if you can see over time from the 1400s to the 1900s, technology innovations or new introductions in technology they came every 100 years, and then it started becoming decades, then it started becoming years, and in all honesty, now it's becoming months and weeks, and it's not going to change. And all of these technologies are combinations of all of the previous innovations or trends that preceded them. However, none of them are dramatically new. They are often just different formats of the innovations or technologies introduced before. And I'll coin a term. Funny enough, Justin Trudeau said that the Canadian president, prime minister, he basically said that the rate of change will never be, oh sorry, my lights have switched off here, excuse me. The rate of change has never been this fast, but it will never be this slow again, which is quite a smart term and quite relevant. So that's enough of establishing the basis. Now, where have all the innovators gone, and what do we do about that? And I'm not sure if anyone has seen the Gartner hype cycle. But basically, Gartner is a research house. They look at technology trends, they talk to business people, they analyze the market, they see how businesses and consumers are adopting technology, and they put different technologies on a hype cycle. So usually there's a technology trigger. Let's say we're talking about ChatGPT. The trigger a while back would have been statistical modeling, it would have been computing power, it would have been large learning models, a lot of little things. And then it goes to a peak of exaggerated expectations. So when that comes out, everyone's on the hype cycle like, whoa, so much has changed. We have to get on board. We have to adopt. We have to do something about this. And you can see news stories, acquisitions, consultants making tons of money from this, which is all good. People have to accept and understand and make sense of their new world and see if they're not going to be disrupted. But then after all of that hype, often what you find is that technology goes into the trough of disillusionment, basically saying, sheesh, we've now overhyped now, everything came out. Is it really that fancy? Is it really that disruptive? Do I really need to do something with this? And they start getting disillusioned because maybe it was a fad, maybe it was a hit and miss. No one's really come out of the blocks. So maybe we should start watching and waiting. But then all of a sudden, people around the world start doing things. New incumbents start using this technology and start solving problems with it. And then all of a sudden, people start getting enlightened. They start saying, ooh, okay, check this company in Japan, check this Australian business, check what they've done in the US on this, check this African company, what they're doing with technology. FinTech is a perfect example. Maybe we should start taking note of this. Maybe we need to start adopting this. Maybe we need to start doing business cases and figuring out how we innovate. And when they start doing that, big businesses, small businesses start becoming more productive by leveraging that tech or finding ways to use it. Now, a lot of what I based that article on, where Mansi basically called me out on, was on a great book, and it's a must read for pretty much anyone who has any interest in technology and how technology and innovation and disruption is basically psychologized or basically consumed or accepted most commonly in the business world, because there's a big change process that people go through to adopt technology, and let's be honest, it fails more than it succeeds. That's the truth. People don't succeed the first time. And if I have to summarize the author, who was a very famous thinker, an academic from Harvard, Clayton Christensen, he basically said the following: disruptive innovations start as simpler, cheaper, more reliable, or convenient alternatives to established technologies. So he's not saying, what he's saying there is nothing dramatically new, nothing spellbinding, nothing like, wow. It's alternatives to existing things. And I'll talk a bit about that a little bit later. It initially doesn't meet existing market needs. So remember what I said on the hype curve. It can eventually surpass sustaining technologies once they improve. Okay, now let's use e-commerce as an example. Who of you thought 10 years ago you could go on your mobile phone, order dog food, and get that in a day? Probably would have said you're crazy. Who would have thought 5 years ago that was possible? Maybe, maybe not. But who would have thought even 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that ordering dog food could come to you in less than an hour? Maybe, maybe not. But who thinks that today? Very possible. Why? And why is that, right? E-commerce, nothing fancy to us today, but e-commerce came about from a variety of factors that came together to deliver you an amazing experience. What were those? And I'll touch on a few. So the mobile phone and super apps and smart apps, those are all things that were made possible by your big, sorry, my lights keep going off here, by the big tech companies, notably Apple. They made the appification of things possible, but also the web, payment gateways and trust of payment gateways. That came about over a very long period of time. I know my parents, for example, they would not trust buying or sending money over the internet, but those trends change over time. And remember how I showed you about that consumer, that Gen Z, you know, the way they're going to pay, the way they're going to consume things tomorrow, not the same as we expect them to work. And that those payment gateways were made possible. Cloud enabled e-commerce retailers to store hundreds and thousands and millions of products. Amazon was the pioneer here. And then you add cloud together with compute power in the cloud to understand your buying trends, your preferences, your likes, your personality, to make you want to buy that thing that pops up on your social media, on your app, and that creepy feeling of, maybe I should buy this. I don't know why it's suggesting it. I kind of like it. And by the time you've clicked on the product and checkout, you're basically there at the payment. And that's the till, right? You don't have to go to a physical store And that goes down now from, that started with books, DVDs, later on electronics, and now, like I said, dog food and fresh milk and the likes, right? Personally speaking, I barely go to retail stores. And all of this happened because there was a confluence or a lot of parallel things that came together in one to deliver a solution to a person. And that wouldn't have been possible if all of those technologies didn't come together. So do you see what I mean about innovation? It's not a bright spark moment. It is what I mentioned before, the selling or the improvement of things over time. And e-commerce wasn't a hit or miss. It wasn't a hit from the start. In fact, there were many missed e-commerce opportunities. Like if you can go Google pets.com, for example, that was one of the famous year 2000 plus stories which people remember as a massive buyout and then crash. And why does e-commerce work, and why is it seen as innovative? It's because of a few things. A lot of things that happen slowly, and then something that felt like it was sudden. And why is that? It appeals to lazy, and I'd rather say or impulsive customers. And if you think about any innovation at all, most likely it appeals to those two audiences. Either lazy or giving me something to save me time and make me more productive. So you can think of it in a private life or in a professional life. If I'm generally lazy or need to be more productive or to save time, makes my life easy, give it to me, I want it. And impulsive, e-commerce in many aspects deals to, if you're not lazy or you need to save time, to impulsive people who get a dopamine rush or joy out of purchasing online. And that's why it was seen as innovative. So as you can see, it's not necessarily a one bright spark moment. It's a combination of many, many things that someone over time on the maturity curve said, we're ready, and they serve that to a customer after many, many trials. And let's not forget the ability to fulfill e-commerce. That is made possible because the density of urban areas enabled your retailers to deliver you things at an acceptable time. That wouldn't have been possible until the point where there was a common, a breaking point where there were enough consumers to purchase that at an acceptable price. And it's the same thing with Uber. Uber would never be successful if there weren't enough people going on apps and hailing Uber cabs. So as you can see, a lot of the innovation comes from fixing things or offering things that were previously seen as non-effective, non-efficient to appeal to those clients. Now I want you to picture this in your world. What is our world? This is our world. We're living in a world where the internet's getting faster, data's getting cheaper, the ability to do computing is getting cheaper as well. So you can do far more complex things at a fraction of the price, and anyone can do that. The tools in which people build these things are cheaper, so you can become an AI expert or a computer programmer far quicker than before, and that's just one example. The cost of hardware is cheaper. If you compare the cost and size of hardware 10 years ago to today, it is radically different. What you could do on a device that was probably the size of my palm 10 years ago, you can do on something not much bigger than a SIM card. This is the world we're living in, and all of these things surround us. And it's up to us to understand the world we're living in and start making sense of it and be aware of all of these things, because the next innovation we're going to find is a combination of all of these things. Now, this is what I want to tell you. There's no such thing as new ideas. So remember what I said in the beginning, innovation, no such thing as new ideas. And we're now back at that path of disillusionment. That is where the innovators have gone. The innovators have gone. They are now in this path of disillusionment where a lot of things have changed. A lot of the big shifts have happened, and people are disillusioned. They're tired. They are wondering how do I live with this world? Do I have time? And how do I make sense of it? And now I'm going to tell you what Clayton Christensen, how he solved this, or how he unpacked this for his readers, for mass understanding. If you look at technology, if you look at the green line, that's the common requirement, or let's call it the ability for consumers to use the technology of today. And the blue line is your incumbent companies. That is the rate at which people that can offer their technology to sustain what they offer, and they will offer incremental or let's call it minor evolutions over time. So you can think of your bank, your telco provider, your perhaps even your software that you use on your computer. Those are big companies. They're incumbents. They're established. They have you in their hand. They will deliver incremental outcomes over time, and that requirement will stay stagnant. So anything new that they offer won't necessarily result in something dramatically new or innovative. And I think anyone who has an iPhone probably understands that the iPhone, and I know the Apple people won't love this, but the iPhone, if I could stay with my iPhone 8 Plus, I probably would. In my eyes, the main difference is the camera quality, nothing much more to what an iPhone is today. And if you can think about that, that is the sustaining line. However, organizations that are disruptive, people who are disruptive, develop a new tangent where very quickly they can meet the green line and start offering what the market is able to consume. But that is the innovator's dilemma. How do you achieve that? How do you get there? How do you do that in a world that's quite with that already has reached some form of peak of consumption? So these are the tips that Christensen suggested. He said disruptive technologies must be assigned to new organizations focused on emerging markets. That by organization, he doesn't mean a new company necessarily. That can be an organization within a company. It can be an informal organization of people within a corporate, within a small to medium enterprise. How do you assign these people to understand a new market or a potential to attract a new market by using emerging technology and disruptive technology? Establish a small separate organization to be excited about the initial modest gains. Like I said earlier, not always a success, but small gains, small understanding, small disruptions and innovations are the fuel to continue innovating or trying out new things. Plan for small, fail-fast bets on disruptive technologies and adapt quickly. So why I'm saying this is also, it's important to recognize that the innovators haven't gone. We are now living with so much tech. We need to actually start making the changes, and this is why he wrote this book. And this book is over 20 years old. But the trends now we're living in a hyper accelerated world where there's so much in front of us, and we need to start making sense of it. And discover new markets where disruptive technologies can thrive. And that's the ultimate challenge, right? How do you find the markets of the lazy or impulsive people, or the people who are hungry to do that? And a friend of mine actually said the best way to find out what might work, and that's why actually peer focus groups are quite dangerous, because often people will tell you what you want to hear, but ask people what they hate. Ask yourself, what do you hate? Somewhere there is where the disruptive technology can thrive. And Netflix is a good example. Netflix was highly innovative because people hated going to the video store and to rewind the thing, to forget to bring it back. And guess what? Netflix was initially a physical service delivering DVDs. Blockbuster, if who remembers that name, in South Africa, you know, Video Den and all those places. People hated that. I mean, we have nostalgia about it, but let's be honest, that was a perfect example of a disruptive company coming through and doing that. BlackBerry was the same with a cell phone, but then Apple surpassed them. So an important thing to remember is this model repeats itself. So how to close this, and how do we make sense of this? So in the background, that's my kids playing Fortnite. They're on a PlayStation. That was I think probably a photo taken 2 years back of what was then a 4 and a 6-year-old. But I think my 4-year-old learned to read, not thanks to his parents, thanks to forcing himself to figure out games. Now, I think about them, and I think about how would I teach them to innovate, and how do I stay innovative. And innovation, what I want to leave you with is the innovators haven't gone. The hype cycle might have dulled down for our generation, but it's not going anywhere. So what do we need to do? We need to stay inquisitive, keep reading things, keep talking to people, keep engaging with like-minded people, be open to different ways of thinking, find out how other markets have adopted technology, and don't feel guilty. I think a big part, personally speaking, is someone who goes on LinkedIn and you see what people are doing and you feel guilty for either not knowing what the trend is about, not knowing, understanding the technology is enough. The truth is, technology, like the cell phone, like using apps, evolved to a point where you could start adopting that very simply in your life. You don't have to be a computer programmer to do it. You can go and set up an e-commerce store within hours today, have a pay point set up. They even offer, I mean, they're even offering you delivery networks if you use the Shopify templates and things like that. So the trend is never anyone can innovate. That's my point, you know. And I find, and I'm sure a lot of us have those discussions, you know, where finding out the most innovative people are the people who are practical fixers, not necessarily the most intelligent people. It's people who figured out what people hate and they said, let me solve that. And I'm here to tell you today that if we make it personal, all of a sudden, making it personal to solve problems, to find the lazy or impulsive people within our current businesses or in new ventures we want to drive, all of a sudden we start finding opportunities, and then we become more receptive to understanding how technology or disruptions can start solving those problems. And then finally, find your inner innovator. Every one of you, every one of us is actually an innovator. And I feel if you follow a lot of these trends and you try and apply it into your daily environment and be open to failing and failing quickly, a big indicator of success, funny enough, is how quickly you fail and fail forward, because failure is learning, right? And that is technology, and that is disruption, and that is ultimately innovation. So yeah, I thought while addressing the concept of where have all the innovators gone, they haven't necessarily gone. They've kind of gone into this mode of trying to figure out the world and actually starting to become productive rather than going into this workshop mode and design thinking mode and innovation mode. Yes, that exists. The hype might have died down, but it's definitely there. And today I want to just tell you that it's in all of us. It's all possible. It's okay to feel these feelings that I've put there. However, all of us have an innovator, and we're all there to, and anyone can disrupt the world they're living in. So yeah, that's basically my message for today, and I'm open to take any questions, good or bad. There's no such thing as a bad question, as they say.
Sorry, Tsoleri, you muted. Just unmute yourself. Thank you.
Oh, apologies for that. Well, thank you, Lazarus, for a wonderful presentation. It was very eye-opening and very detailed in terms of, you know, the direction of innovation and essentially how to follow everything. And in that order, we do have questions here from one of our attendees, Pomozo. And basically, Pomozo has two questions for us. So I'll first read the first question, you'll answer, and then we'll move on to the second one. So his first question is that, how can we overcome resistance to change within organizations, especially when implemented new technologies or processes that may disrupt existing ways of working?
Jeez. Yeah, so that's a great question, and one of the toughest questions. And it's interesting. I've often said, you know, change and disruption is never tech only. It's people and process, right? And often taking people with you is critical. The people most resistant to change I found in my career are the ones who feel they weren't consulted, the technology was thrown on them, and often you find these people often had similar ideas, they just weren't really included in the thinking. And yes, you're always going to have people who just reject it all out because and why do they do that? Because ultimately they feel that their environment is going to be disrupted and people hate change. And they don't like, and they fear the unknown. So common consultation, taking people with, sharing the idea, sometimes going slower to go faster later is critical. And it's a really difficult thing to do because often when you're at let's call it a productive point and you're moving quickly, the last thing you think of is taking people with you, right? So I have often found, notably for things that are going to change people's lives, is to consult, take them with, and align across the organization from the top to the bottom. Now, successful change is not when people feel they were told, just take it or leave it. Take it or you'll be fired, or adapt or die, or those sayings. It's where people felt like, wow, the change is coming, it's better for me. And the stats prove it, right? With all the technological change over time, actually it's created more productive people and new jobs. It's not always taking away jobs. And the stats actually prove that technology up to date have actually created more jobs. If I have to be controversial, it might take the future of tech is a bit scarier, but it is up to us to innovate and find how we remain relevant. But yeah, basically the bottom line is you have to take people with, and that's why change management is actually an art that has, I think, often been lost in light of big transformation programs, and one which actually really needs to be put forward to understand the psyche of the people from the lowest level, the operators, the people in the field, to the people in the ivory towers who are coming up with these fancy innovations. But you have to spend the time and take the effort to take them along.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully Pomozo is answered. And then to the second question that it was asked, it says, what do you think are some of the most significant barriers to innovation within large established organizations like Transnet, Eskom, and other government entities? And how can we overcome them to foster a culture of innovation?
Wow. Sure, that's a good one. First of all, red tape. Public sector government is riddled with red tape, and I had the privilege of being on a project at SARS in my previous career, where SARS basically said we are going to get all the money we can from taxpayers and from a revenue and customs perspective, and we're going to apply technology smartly. And what they did at the time was really, I still feel in South Africa, probably the best digital transformation to date, because it was truly inclusive and end to end. And I'm using this as an example of how I think SAIEs can learn from this, right? What SARS did is, if someone remembers how you used to submit a tax return, right? Everyone hated submitting a tax return because you had to submit 140 plus pages, supporting docs. It took forever to get a refund. And they started thinking about this thing called informed compliance. So if I inform you on how to comply and you comply, I reward you. So if you submit your tax return on time, you do it in a compliant manner, you get your money back, and I'll make it easy for you. So your tax return could actually take up to 5 minutes, maybe a bit longer if you're a bit more complicated. And how do I do that? I digitize it. So I use these online forms which evolve, which sort of are dynamic and they change. When you submit that, it goes into a risk engine. So again, nothing new. All of these things are nothing new. It's just innovative thinking, new ways to do it. They said, okay, cool. Joledi, you're a cool guy. You're compliant. Every year you submit your stuff. We've kind of taken a look into your bank statements. You're good. What you're saying, we believe. Boom. There you go. You're done. This guy, quite dodgy. This guy's getting money all over the place. We don't know. Maybe we need to ask more questions in a compliant manner, in a receptive manner. And what that also did was it enabled scarce public sector agents to do more with less, i.e. be more productive by removing, and I think the chief technology officer at the time said, wasn't finding needles in the haystack. It was removing hay So they had a smaller haystack to find these people. And what they also did then to make it productive behind the scenes was have workflows where, Choledi, if you're a senior assessor and I'm a junior assessor, I get this, I say, I think this dodgy, your time is more scarce and you're a higher paid person, so that the difficult case goes to you, and I can do stuff like, okay, this guy's petrol claims look good, they're in order, I can believe it, his role, cool, he or she gets that. But why am I saying all of that? They looked at this end to end, they understood their customers, they purposely removed red tape, they put all of this in an accelerated technology program, and there was end-to-end commitment to make it happen. People were empowered, they were accountable, there wasn't barriers, and there was proper budgets assigned to this. They committed to it. They weren't, and let's be honest, there wasn't corruption or people stopping things at different parts. It was run, if I'm like a corporate, if I can say it like that. And that's why technology change happened, because all of those barriers were removed, people were empowered, and the energy was amazing at the time. I think it was around 2010 as well, where the Soccer World Cup was on, and SARS was doing that. And I think the energy, people worked super hard. I've never seen, and I did a fair bit amount of work in public sector. You'd go there 7 o'clock on a Monday night, and the lights were on, because people they felt like public servants. They were making the change happen. And I think those are lessons, and hopefully it answers your question by giving you an example of how the SOEs can start thinking about that. What is the technology? What are the problems? What do my customers hate? How do I apply us? And how do I create structures to change, when I spoke about those structures?
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. We'll move on to our next question. It's from Walter Moilwa. So his question says, what can be done about other radical innovative inventions, such as Elon Musk's Starlink, which would eliminate the entire pre-existing telecom industry? It would lead to a huge loss of jobs, yet it would improve the other areas of our country's development. Where do we draw a balance between the two? Should we really care that much? So that's the question.
So Starlink, right? That's the satellite phone, right? The satellite phone service. I think so. I mean, I know South Africa hasn't regulated it, but and obviously it can be quite disruptive to telcos if you think about it. I mean, that's taking sort of if that becomes commoditized and cheap, or cheap enough. And I think I've heard of some of those prices. They're coming down quite quickly. Yes, it can really be quite a disruptive thing, and it also means that you don't have to have a cell tower. You're talking upwards into the sky, and it's the same Uber model, right? If you think about innovation, the Uber model, the more satellites Elon Musk can get into the sky, the lower the prices will be, and the more users there'll be. And all of a sudden, while we're now probably at that hype of expectation on it, we're probably going to go into a trough of disillusionment where we're going to be like, yeah, this thing's not so great. It's difficult to find phones, or okay, I can't phone my friend on it, or whatever it might become. At some point, if as countries or governments start enabling it and people start really applying it, we'll start seeing the examples, and we'll start getting to that plateau of productivity.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting to also hear. This is also another question from one of our attendees. The name is Itumeleng Sebapu, and these are the questions that they have. It's basically 3 questions, and then I'll just go through each question. So the first one says, what skills and training do individuals need to develop to stay relevant in an innovative environment?
Okay. Tools, sure. The tools are your internet, right? Social media, who you subscribe to. I really think if you curate your social media these days, it's almost better than books, because it's so current. Yeah, there are some classic books which you should read, like The Innovator's Dilemma. Good to Great is another one about organizations that actually really adopt these things and develop functional or thriving businesses under. the tools also are there. Once you found your problem, you'll be amazed at what you can do on the internet. And all you need is one or two crafty people who know how to apply them, like people who are now adopting GPT and all the tools that come with ChatGPT, all of a sudden now able to create language translators. They can create GPTs by throwing a lot of IP into this thing that creates a chatbot that answers questions for you, and all of a sudden they have a business that can diagnose or help you with farming, or people who can answer questions about pet grooming or whatever it might be, or bring those into existing solutions. So I think that the internet is really your friend. And then common interest groups like this. I mean, it's great to have a common community. You probably see the same problems, but the craftier people, I believe, are the ones who will really take the time to understand customers and really understand customers. And I'll use an example. So I worked with a person from Holland, and she introduced me to her husband, and he was involved in politics in the Netherlands. He was a lobbyist. It's a thing in the Netherlands and a lot of the Western countries. And what he did, he wanted to start a business in South Africa, and the community he found and people he met, he shared a questionnaire with him, and he just started asking questions about from wine to all sorts of ideas, and one of them was furniture. And a lot of people actually realized they had this problem of finding relatively cheap, accessible, custom furniture. And then, long story short, he started engaging with handymen and carpenters in Joburg, private guys, individual guys in garages, and eventually created a company called Furniture Spot. So that was, and I'm sure some of you have heard it, I'm sure some of you have seen adverts on the internet. And this was a guy who came from the Netherlands, understood a local problem, didn't understand the market, didn't have a ton of money, but just through crowdsourcing and using the internet, using e-commerce, created quite an innovative way to get bespoke furniture. Because the way he started was, then he said, send us a picture and we will quote you on it. And he got his handyman to do that. And then eventually started seeing, well, the majority of my market are buying these couches, they love these tables. So he started standardizing his offering. So eventually evolved over time, and he actually now has, there's quite a few stores in Joburg, and he exited. So if you think about the tools that this person would have used, was questionnaires, surveys, the internet, e-commerce site creators, and solve the problem.
Great. So obviously the tools that could also help you, mainly internet and social media. Got that. And then the second question from Itumeleng is that, how can we ensure that innovation is inclusive and benefits a broad range of stakeholders?
So how do you ensure that the solution benefits a broad range of stakeholders?
Yes, okay, let me repeat the question for you, sir. It says, how can we ensure that innovation is inclusive and benefit a broad range of stakeholders?
Okay. Whew, it's tough, right? I think if I've tried I've also been in, sorry, my lights keep going off. Some innovator needs to actually figure out when there's a person in the room, the lights should not go on and off all the time. I think it's a good question, but it's a dangerous one. And I think a lot of times innovation fails, or new ideas fail, is they try to please too many people. I think the best innovators are the people who've really understood their audience, like really understood, who am I doing this for? What is the lazy person in that cohort? Or how do I appeal to their impulses? Random idea, why is TikTok successful? They realize that kids of today don't really like Facebook. Facebook's like their parents' social media. They love filters, they love their attention span is really dwindling. They love instant gratification, and they like playfulness, and they love sharing. So that was someone who really understood. They looked at Instagram. Instagram was there before, Snapchat, but they really understood the audience. And now TikTok became, let's call it, the leading digital platform or digital social media channel for a very specific audience. But my answer in that is, yes, they're pleasing a lot of people, but they're pleasing a specific audience. My grandmother will not go use TikTok. She might, but that's not the focus audience. So I think knowing your audience first, knowing who will buy this is the key, rather than trying to please too many people.
Understood. Hopefully that answers the question. And then now the third question from the same person, Itumeleng, it says, what's the importance of storytelling and communication in innovation?
Sure. Storytelling. So people understand stories well. Stories are ways to get people to understand. Because I want to contextualize it to the innovation spots, right? And then people, it's like a skill of the future, right? Why are stories important? If I can summarize it, it's maybe to translate either difficult to accept or difficult to consume topics in a way that energizes and captivates the audience. If I have to go and present to you, if a technical person a super technical person who only obsesses about the hardware of this computer I'm talking on, goes and tells you why it's great, they're going to tell you about every wire and the way the chips are welded and the power of the whatever thing on it, versus a person who says your problems of tomorrow will not be solved with what you have here. Let me tell you why. Let me take you on a journey. You captivate the audience, you understand it, and all of a sudden it demystifies the problem. It makes you believe that, ooh, I now need to listen to the solution. So not too dissimilar from marketing or telling the story. So I think the reason why that's an important skill, it's not necessarily telling a story like a book, right? It's not like saying once upon a time. It's more about understanding your audience and taking them on a journey, and taking them, unpacking the journey in a way that they are attached to the words you're using. So that's why I say the skill of storytelling is important.
Okay, no, that's understood. We're gonna go to our other question. Well, this is a question also from one of our attendees, Pomoto. So the question says, what are some practical strategies or frameworks that organizations can implement to embrace failure as a valuable learning experience and use it to fuel continuous improvement and innovation?
Sure. So if I understand that correctly, how do I embrace failure within the cycle of innovation? Is that how you understand the question?
Yes. So essentially, what do you take from your failure and then use it to now continually improve as an organization?
Yeah, tough one, hey. I think if people make failure too personal, they lose energy and they lose the will to continue. The other one is creating safe environments for people to fail. And that comes with a maturity, I think, from leaders as well, to say, yeah, it's cool. I don't expect you to be successful on day one. So because often people fail and they feel that because they feel there's really bad or negative repercussions by getting it wrong, hence why they fear failure. But if you embrace failure and you fail forward, as they say, and the failure is contributing towards a goal which everyone starts seeing and believing through quick wins. So a way to embrace failure is to also identify the quick wins and achieve them quickly and celebrate them. Then all of a sudden you start embracing the failures you make the next time. So I think that's it. So it's the spirit in which you approach it, the environment in which you create, and then also the way you define success. Sometimes the way you define success isn't necessarily profit. It isn't necessarily a happiest customer. It might be that this thing actually works. Phase 2 is to get it to the hands of people to actually start solving the most critical needs, and hence why it continues. So yeah, it's multifaceted, but I think it starts from the top, the environment in which you operate in, and then being in the world of embracing the failure as you move forward. And there's a popular saying, in fact, I've actually shared it with someone yesterday. I'll go on my phone quickly to, just give me a second. I want to share it with you guys. If you want to be successful faster, you must double your rate of failure. Success lies on the far side of failure. And that was the founder of IBM who said that.
That's a really interesting quote. Or fail fast to be successful.
Yeah, like funny enough that actually the faster you fail, the quicker you innovate.
Yeah. Now we have another question from Mark Gordon. He says, what do you think of the patent mechanism in SAIEE?
Sure. I must be honest, I'm not too well versed with that. So you probably need a good lawyer who understands patenting laws and how to operate within that, and what deems new and patentable solutions. So I'm probably not the best person to ask. You'd probably need a patent lawyer. But mind you, a decent start, and don't believe everything it says, is your GPTs, right? Just to get some guidelines or just to understand, how must I even start thinking about this? Asking GPTs once and twice, just your specific questions are not bad ways to just start saying what I need to think about before you even consult a lawyer who probably charges you by the word or the minute or the phone call, and then rather curate your thinking and be quite specific. So that would be probably my advice as to a friend, let's call it that.
Basically find more information about the patent mechanism and get clarity.
There's so many layers to it, like which markets, under what patent law, under what patent. It really is multifaceted and quite complex. If you and patenting and trademarking are also quite synonymous, not the same, but synonymous. So yeah.
Okay, well, this will be our last question for the evening. So it's from Pascal Motwasele. He says, well, he starts off with a quote. So it says, build it and they will come. And the question is saying, please relate this statement to the technology hype cycle you presented on, particularly with regards to the excitement hype and then disillusionment that might come off it.
Sure. These are good questions, eh? Worst statement, most dangerous statement ever, build it and they will come. I even remember a white paper released basically saying build it and they will come, and they were talking about apps. Like if you built an app, people are just going to use it and your business will be digitized. And probably when people did that, and remember when we were always downloading apps for anything, you were like, and I'm pretty sure a lot of us have like this little list of things I will make an app. That was at the hype of at the top of the expectation hype, right? And then where are we today? Probably disillusioned, like flip it. Everything's just done. Like, wow, I can go on the app store and there's apps I haven't even thought about and ways to do things that, I haven't even seen before. And then going forward, the build and they will come is probably the way in which the future innovators will find the consumers of tomorrow, those kids that we talk about. How will they start thinking? How will they, when they enter the workforce and start spending their money, how will they then, what will their patterns be? How will their personal lives evolve? And knowing those customers, I think that's one way to look ahead and make sense of the build it and they will come. Because I think the build and they will come thing was in a world where at the hype, at the top of the hype cycle, was probably at the high. One reason why you have a hype cycle is it's like, shish, we need to do this for everyone, like you said, pleasing all the stakeholders. And only later on, people saying, you know what, now I get the technology, and I actually know the problem of what people hate. And now I'm going to go and apply it all, like the guy in the furniture store, or who created the furniture store.
Interesting. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Lazo. There's been a really wonderful evening, and to really get insights, in terms of innovation and how to handle it and how it actually goes. Thank you very much for being able to answer all the questions and, participating with all the attendees. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you for having me, guys. All the very best.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.